The Costa Rican Experience, Adaptive Management and Sustainable Development. My name is Cheryl Mervich, and I am a graduate student at the University of Colorado Denver's campus. I am currently pursuing a master's in public administration. During the summer 2015 term, I took a course in sustainable development and adaptive resource management. This course was designed to provide a first-hand field experience of the interaction between and among the social, economic, and environmental systems of Costa Rica. This course provided a very rich learning experience as we examined Costa Rica through a systems thinking and analysis approach, integrating the physical, biological, and social sciences. As a former science teacher, I am very passionate about the environment in which we live and about education. I wanted to walk away from this course knowing more about sustainability and how I can incorporate measures in my life that will have a positive impact. I also wanted to begin thinking about how I can incorporate these concepts into the work I do to help ensure that we have a more sustainable environment for the future. The course was divided into two parts: in-class readings, discussion, and lecture, and then field observations, discussion, and lecture. We spent 2 days in the classroom learning about sociocultural, economic, and ecological issues, and about sustainable development and adaptive management of resources at different scales. We then spent 10 days in Costa Rica applying the concepts we learned in class. The class was composed of a wide variety of students from environmental sciences, public administration, and communications. Having such a diverse group of students provided for interesting and engaging conversation regarding each of the course topics. Throughout this presentation, you'll hear the incredible sounds of the Costa Rican rainforest behind my narration. This was too good not to share with you. Our adventures began in San Jose, where we loaded the bus that would carry our belongings, and we met Hernan, who would safely transport us around the country. Hernan was an excellent addition to our group. It was fun talking with him using my very limited Spanish skills. That is my one regret, that I did not have the opportunity to study Spanish before traveling to Costa Rica. I would have loved to have been able to engage with the locals at a deeper level. La Paz Waterfall Gardens was our first stop. It was a beautiful and educational first place to go. La Paz is a waterfall garden, peace lodge, and animal refuge. The plant and animals there were a sight to see. The landscape architecture planning was something to be studied. The winding paths, landscaping, and animal refuges were laid out in an excellent manner. The animals there lack the basic skills to survive in the wild on their own. They've been recaptured by the government or donated by their owners. An aviary holds toucans, macaws, and grosbeaks, which we saw first in La Paz and then again in their natural habitats as our trip progressed. We also saw the blue jean poison dart frog for the first time before seeing it out in the wild. Over 24 different species of butterflies exist in Costa Rica, and La Paz houses 20 of them. Many other animals were housed there, including monkeys, hummingbirds, snakes, and jungle cats. We were warned before our arrival that it might rain while we were at La Paz, and it surely did. But we had to remember that we were in the rainforest. Not only did we get wet by the rain, but also by the spray of the waterfalls on our faces. We saw 5 different waterfalls, and one of which was called White Magic. A nearby tour guide instructed us to stare at the waterfall and then look to the right. When doing so, it looked as though the rock walls were moving. After we left La Paz, we headed toward the Organization for Tropical Studies, La Selva Biological Research Station. La Selva spans 1,600 hectares in the tropical rainforest and receives approximately 4 meters of rainfall each year. La Selva was originally established by Dr. Leslie Holdridge as an area dedicated to experimentation for the improvement of natural resources management. The Organization for Tropical Studies purchased the area and turned it into a private biological reserve and station. Students, professors, and researchers from around the world visit La Selva each year to study the tropical rainforest. La Selva contains new growth rainforest as well as old growth rainforest. This slide contains an image of leafcutter ants which were all around in Costa Rica. It was very interesting to learn that one ant cutter carries a leaf part while a smaller ant rides along and cleans the leaf. Soldier ants also patrol the pathway to ensure every ant is doing its part. While we were at La Selva, we had a number of tours guided by a professor, but we also had a daytime and a nighttime tour by one of the La Selva guides. They were very knowledgeable about the rainforest and were able to share an abundance of information with our group. Also during our stay, we watched a group from Brown University use a flying drone to capture images of the rainforest. They also flew a specialist in to fly the drone while they conducted their studies. Buttress roots are especially large roots which support trees in the rainforest. After spotting these roots for the first time, we couldn't help but continue to point them out along the trip. Another interesting root system, which is pictured in the middle of this slide, belongs to the walking palm trees. We first spotted spider monkeys and howler monkeys while at La Selva. It was an incredible experience to watch the howler monkey howl as we watched him through the telescope. You could see his chest compressing and contracting, and you could almost feel its howl reverberate through the forest. Wild boars were also spotted while at La Selva, though the two cuddling at dusk didn't seem too wild. In order to get from one end of the reserve to the other, we had to cross a suspension bridge in La Selva. The first night we were there, we saw a sloth climbing along the cable lines. Another very interesting part of our trip to La Selva was the visit to the GIS lab. The director of the lab told us about a project currently being run out of La Selva. 50 meters of the river's edge is protected land that cannot be developed. This specific project aims to increase that land by 25 meters in certain areas in order to help with the existing fragmentation issues. They are using GIS software to determine the best areas in which to offer incentives to landowners to protect this land. One evening, we ventured out and away from La Selva and visited the town of Puerto Viejo. This small town was full of life. While there, we wandered into local markets, walked past the church and judicial building, and passed by the school where kids were playing soccer outside. The grassy area where the kids were playing is typical in small towns in Costa Rica. People typically congregate here, at the schools, and in the churches. We also fit in a little adventure while staying at La Selva. We spent one afternoon whitewater rafting. Our guides helped make the trip a blast. Not only did they lead us through the rapids and provide a safe and exciting trip, they told us about the environment, the people, and the local culture. A kayaker accompanied our two rafts to ensure the river was safe ahead. It was especially interesting to learn that the photographer who captured this image was one of Costa Rica's first Olympic kayakers. This is a picture of our group as we prepared for the trip. On the right is a picture of our adventurous and fearless leader, Dr. Moreno. When we stopped for a snack halfway through the trip, he was the first to jump off the edge of the riverbank. Our next stop was at the Don Juan Education and Organic Farm. Between lectures from this class and the visit to the farm, I was inspired to change some of my food consumption habits. As often as possible, I will be eating organic and locally grown produce for both health and environmental reasons. The owner, Don Carlos, led us around the farm. While here, we did everything from pull and replant a yucca plant to apply natural makeup from the garden and walk through the medicinal and herb gardens. We also tasted a number of items along the way. One very interesting part from the farm was that the cows were housed on an elevated platform. At first we didn't know why, but after the tour was over, we knew that it was because the cow droppings fell down below to help with the composting site, but also so that the methane gas could be trapped and stored for use in the kitchen on site. The cows graze on a very small plot of land that is sectioned off for each month of the year. This keeps the cows fed and the grass growing. Pictured to the left are what you'd call free-range chickens. The milk from the cows and eggs from the chickens are also used on site. As my dad is in construction, I thought this part of the Don Juan site was very interesting. Don Carlos built two structures in which guests can come stay on the farm and dine in the restaurant. The buildings are made of rock and wire fencing. They have concrete floors and skylights that allow a lot of natural light. The electricity is also solar powered. These buildings are actually earthquake resistant, which I thought was just incredible. If an earthquake strikes, the rock formation will give just enough give with the shaking, but the building will not crumble. Not only were these functional structures made from materials from the earth, they were also very beautiful. From Don Juan's, we went to La Fortuna and saw the Arenal volcano. La Fortuna has not always been the name of this town. In 1968, the volcano suddenly erupted. These eruptions killed a number of people and buried 3 small villages, but this town was saved. The locals felt so fortunate to have been spared, they renamed the town La Fortuna. The area draws a number of tourists with the volcano, but also with the hot springs that surround the area, activities on Lake Arenal, and adventure activities such as ziplining, river rafting, and horseback riding. We were able to partake in the adventure and go ziplining one afternoon. It was an incredible experience seeing the volcano, the rainforest, and the lake from high in the sky. It was adventurous, stunningly beautiful, and our guides loved showing us a good time. While on the trip, I had a number of conversations with many guides. They are all very hospitable and thankful for what the tourist industry has brought them. A few people did mention, though, that the prices tourists pay are the prices locals pay when eating out or visiting the hot springs. The added tourists are beginning to drive up prices in all facets of life. One of the exciting things about traveling is all of the delicious and new foods you get to try. I had a number of new fruits I've never tasted before and ate beans and rice with almost every meal. The coffee was also delicious. I didn't bring souvenirs home, but I did bring plenty of coffee for my family and friends to try. We visited a very picturesque coffee shop along the edge of Lake Arenal one afternoon. It was interesting to learn that this is the largest lake in Costa Rica, yet it is not natural. It was created by a dam. A town is actually buried beneath the lake, and in years where the water is low, you can see the steeple from the church. The lake used to create most of the country's electricity through hydropower. This experience made me think about humans' impact on the natural environment and the fragmentation of the land that we create for our own uses. Fragmentation is not unique to Costa Rica, nor is the creation of lakes from human-made dams. On this trip, I learned that a town exists below Lake Dillon in Colorado as well, close to where I live. About halfway through the trip, it was time for the beach. We visited Playa de Brazalito and immersed ourselves in a true Costa Rican beach vacation. This was a cute and quaint fishing village with a couple small hotels along the water. It was a very special place as it was unlike most others up and down the coast. The locals wanted to protect their town, their history, and their culture, so they came together and decided as a whole that they would not sell their land to big business and hotel chains. We saw a number of sunsets, played on the beach, and took a number of nature walks. We learned about the precious ecosystems of the ocean and estuaries where the sea meets freshwater from rivers or streams, and the precious biodiversity that exists within these areas. We learned about mangrove forests that stabilize the coastline, help to prevent erosion, and provide shelter for animals. Costa Rica has almost 300 beaches, each with a unique experience. While in Costa Rica, I saw white sand and black sand beaches, and even a beach that was covered in shells, Playa con Shell. It was fun to be near the water and swim, snorkel, and surf while we were there. Just when I thought the trip couldn't get any better, our next stop was Monte Alto Nature Reserve. I couldn't believe how dense the forest seemed to be and how close the animals were. I was amazed to learn that this forest we were in was only 20 years old. Monte Alto is a nature reserve located in the Nicoya Peninsula. Locals in the area were shocked when the Rio Nasara lost 90% of its water due to deforestation and knew they had to do something to protect their land and themselves. The community came together and bought land along the watershed to help with the issue. Today, the reserve covers almost 350 hectares and is still growing. The sounds heard throughout this presentation were actually recorded at Monte Alto. Monte Alto was another very special experience. The director of the preserve is a local resident and has been with the reserve for almost 18 years, almost its entire existence. He gave us an informative history of the reserve. One of the guides there was also a college student, but as part of his studies, he works at the reserve. He's a local from the area as well. Monte Alto has an eco-lodge where we stayed and felt extremely connected to our surroundings. Our house mom, who cooked our meals and cleaned our rooms, was a very sweet woman who was also from the nearby town. Here we have a picture of our room and beds. The mosquito netting kept us safe from the bugs. I was very happy to have the netting, more for my comfort than anything else. But if you had seen one of the spiders we did, you'd understand why. Another special memory was watching the storms from the balcony each night. The walks and hikes were also incredible. It was fun to be able to spot and name things on my own as we neared the end of our trip. It's incredible to think about La Paz, which we saw at the beginning of this trip, and Monte Alto, which we saw at the end. They're such different experiences and ways to be immersed in nature. San Jose was our last stop as a group. We visited the National Museum, the Jade Museum, and had a wonderful final dinner together. It was such a pleasure traveling with this group. I learned so much from each and every one of them. Rafael, thank you for putting together such an amazing learning experience. The way I travel will forever be altered. Classmates, thank you for making this trip as fun as any I can imagine and sharing all your knowledge, insights, and experience. Pura vida.